put the glass down. No, just put it down for a second. If you are sitting there right now, looking at the clock on the wall, checking your watch, wondering if we have completely lost our minds, I get it. But I need you to stay with me here. You are looking at a daunting duration. I am looking at a monument, a sprawling, chaotic, vertiginous flight of fancy.
Vertiginous. Is that really the word we are going with?
Yeah.
I would call it a 4.5-hour migraine, mate. I have just spent my entire weekend, I am never getting back. Mind you, watching what you insisted was a cinematic masterpiece. And frankly, I feel like I have aged a decade.
That is just the feeling of the 20th century washing over you.
Yeah.
We're talking about Fritz Lang's Dr. Mabuse, The Gambler, released in 1922. This is not just a movie. It is the grandfather of every psychological thriller, every supervillain origin story, and every paranoid conspiracy flick you have ever loved. You cannot sit across from me and say you did not feel the sheer electric power of the Weimar Republic seeping through the screen.
I did not feel electricity. I felt exhaustion. Let's just be clear for the listener right off the bat so they know what we are dealing with. This thing is colossal. It is literally divided into two parts. Der Großschläger, which is the Great Gambler, and Inferno. And let me tell you, Inferno is a bloody fitting title for the experience of sitting through the second half without a bathroom break. You have dragged me into the deep end here, and the water is completely stagnant.
You are being ridiculous.
No, hear me out. Even the research, the very notes you were so excited about when you pitched this to me, admits it. The source material explicitly calls the film rambling, repetitive, and this is my absolute favorite part, based on a third-rate police thriller.
You are cherry-picking the criticism and completely ignoring the context.
Yes.
That is exactly why we are analyzing this today, to bridge that gap between what they call a third-rate thriller and actual cinema history.
Cinema, the magic vehicle, a comprehensive guide. Journey 1, 1913 to 1950.
I am reading the facts. It is a police procedural that thinks it is high art.
It is high art. But to understand why, you have to look at what Lang was actually doing. He takes this pulp novel by Norbert Jacques, which, yes, was a standard cop versus criminal story, and he elevates it. He turns a procedural into a mirror for a broken society. Think about where we are. Berlin, 1922.
Oh, right. Here comes the history lecture.
It matters. You have to understand the atmosphere to understand the pacing and the chaos of it. The First World War is lost. The Kaiser has fled. The monarchy is gone. And there's a massive power vacuum that nobody knows how to fill.
I get that. Germany was in a bad way.
A bad way is the understatement of the century. We are talking about hyperinflation that is just starting to spiral completely out of control. A loaf of bread costing millions of marks. You have political assassinations happening in broad daylight. There is a literal anarchy in the streets. The research describes this specific environment as fertile soil for crime. And that is exactly what Lang captures on film.
Fertile soil. That is a very poetic way of saying the country was in absolute shambles.
But look at how that mess translates to the screen. The film has this, the source calls it a febrile style. It feels feverish because the country itself was feverish. People were living day to day, gambling their life savings because the money would be completely worthless tomorrow anyway.
Febrile. You really like throwing that word around today. Look, I am not denying the historical reality. It was a grim time. Absolutely. But does that justify a film that simply does not know when to yell cut? You talk about this fertile soil of anarchy and uncertainty. I would argue that Lang just got lost in his own weeds. He threw everything at the wall. You've got gambling, you've got hypnosis, counterfeiting, ghosts, cross-dressing.
This is operatic.
It is a kitchen sink mess, mate. It is not resonant. It is just miserable. You watch a parade of people losing their money, losing their minds, and frankly losing the plot. You have the so-called rebellion of some characters and the total baffling apathy of others.
Which is exactly what was happening in 1922. That apathy. That was the defense mechanism of the population. But let's step back for a second, because you are entirely dismissing Lang's ambition here. Do you even realize he was not supposed to make this film in the first place?
I genuinely wish he had not. We could be sitting here talking about a nice, tight 90-minute comedy instead.
Do not be facetious. This is important. Fritz Lang was originally slated to direct The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Ah. Now there is a proper film. Efficient, stylized, genuinely scary, and crucially, it respects the audience's time.
Exactly. Caligari is the benchmark for German expressionism, but Lang had prior commitments with another serial called The Spiders, so he could not do it. But, and this is the key insight that many people completely miss, Lang was the one who suggested the framing device for Caligari.
You mean it was all a dream ending? Or the madman's tale aspect?
The idea that the whole story is being told by a madman sitting in an asylum. That was Lang's explicit contribution to the script before he had to walk away from the project. So when he missed out on directing Caligari, and he watched it become this massive global phenomenon without him, he needed to compensate.
Compensate? Is that what we're calling this? Because to me, it feels a lot more like overcompensation. It is like he thought, I missed the boat on the tight artistic movie, so I am going to make the biggest, loudest, longest thing I can possibly conceive just to prove to everyone I am a genius. It is ego, pure and simple.
It was not just ego, it was scope. Lang described Mabuse as a document of the modern world. He actively wanted to move away from the romantic, mystical stuff like his previous film Destiny and get right into the grit of reality. He looked at what was happening in France. You know Louis Feuillade, right?
The French serial director.
Fantomas.
Il est vampire.
Exactly. See, but those were fun. Fantomas is a lark. It is a serial adventure. You got a guy in a black hood running around rooftops. It does not take itself so agonizingly seriously. And that is exactly the distinction. Lang took that French serial format, the master of disguise, the super criminal, the cliffhangers, and he said, I could do this better. I can make this much superior. And he did. Mabuse is light years ahead of Fantomas in terms of thematic weight. It is not just cops and robbers. It is order versus chaos.
It is cops and robbers, though. It literally is. It is just cops and robbers with a budget that was clearly far too high and an editor who was dead asleep at the wheel. The source material explicitly says it. The theme is the struggle between the law and a criminal organization. Lang had already done this exact thing in The Spiders. He is just rehashing old ground, but dragging it out to 4 hours.
He is taking the genre to a completely new level. You have to look at the villain to understand why this matters. This is not just a guy nicking jewels.
Oh, you want to talk about the villain? Brilliant. Let's talk about Dr. Mabuse, because if we are going to sit here and spend an hour analyzing this, we really need to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the man in the very silly wig.
Rudolf Klein-Rogge. What an absolutely towering performance.
Is it? Is it really? Or is it just a bloke pulling weird faces?
You are unbelievable. You are completely missing the menace of the character. Mabuse is the living embodiment of that chaos we just talked about in the Weimar Republic. He's a psychoanalyst, which is crucial. He knows exactly how the human mind works. He is an avid gambler. He is the head of a massive gang of killers and counterfeiters. He is the spider in the center of the web.
He's a pantomime dame, is what he is. The text literally points out that he uses no fewer than 10 different disguises.
Exactly. It shows his incredible versatility. It shows the audience that evil can look like anyone. One minute he is a respectable stockbroker in a top hat. The next he is a psychiatrist. The next he is a drunk sailor slurring his words in a dive bar.
It is not espionage, though, is it? It is a costume party. 10 disguises, come off it. It is like watching a child play dress-up. Ooh, look at me, I have glued on a fake beard, and now I am a completely different person. And the police, specifically this public prosecutor, Von Wang, are supposedly these powerful intellects, yet they cannot spot the exact same bloke just because he is wearing a different hat and squinting a bit.
It is symbolic. You are being far too literal about the mechanics of a silent film. It is about the fluidity of identity in a crumbling society. In 1922 Berlin, nobody knew who was who anymore. The old social orders were completely gone. A former aristocrat might be begging on the street, and a criminal might be running the bank. Mabuse represents that terrifying, shifting reality. And Klein-Rogge completely sells it. The critics at the time universally praised his intelligent, thoughtful acting.
The critics also specifically mention his depiction of madness, which, let's be brutally honest, is mostly just him widening his eyes until they practically pop out of his skull. It is aggressive images, all right, aggressively silly.
It is hypnotic. That stare is legendary in cinema. It is literally called the Mabuse stare. And you have to contrast him with his counterpart. You cannot have Mabuse without Von Wenck.
Oh, yes. Great defender of law and order.
Played by Bernhard Goetzke. Now, Goetzke gives this incredibly grounded, stoic performance. He is the rock against which the chaotic waves of Mabuse's madness crash. The notes mention that they are equally effective in down-to-earth scenes. You need that balance. If everyone was acting as big as Mabuse, it would be way too much. But Von Wenck grounds the whole thing in reality.
Von Wenck is boring. He's a plank of wood in a nice suit. And frankly, for a supposedly powerful intellect, he is absolute rubbish at his job.
He is up against a literal Superman.
He is up against a man who wins card games by staring very hard at people. Let's talk about the plot, shall we? Because this is where I really start to lose the will to live.
The plot is beautifully intricate. It is a scathing critique of capitalism.
It is mental, is what it is. Just look at the schemes. He steals a secret trade contract. Fine. Standard villain stuff. Then he moves to the stock exchange.
Which was incredibly relevant to the audience. You have to remember, the inflation in 1922 meant the stock market was a terrifying roller coaster. It was not just numbers on a board, it was literal survival. Mabuse manipulating it to start a panic was Lang saying to the audience, look, the whole economy is a gamble. It is all rigged by men in the shadows.
Okay, fine. I will give you the stock market bit. That actually has a bit of bite to it. It shows the fragility of the system. But then we get to the blackjack scene.
The absolute centerpiece of the film. This is one of those famous sequences in all of silent cinema.
It is the absolute nadir of logic. So Mabuse sits down to play cards against this young millionaire, Edgar Hull.
Played brilliantly by Paul Richter.
Right, Richter. And Mabuse wants to bankrupt him. Does he cheat? Does he mark the cards? Does he use a mirror? Does he have an accomplice signal him from across the room? No. He hypnotizes him.
It shows the terrifying power of his will. It is the Ubermensch idea twisted into pure evil.
It is exceptionally lazy writing. He just stares at him and wins. That is bloody convenient, isn't it? I bet 150,000 marks. Stare. Oh, I fold. It is not a heist. It is magic tricks. If I wanted to watch a wizard, I would go to a children's birthday party. There is absolutely no tension because Mabuse essentially has superpowers.
You are so painfully literal. The hypnosis is not just parlor trick hypnosis. It represents how the German people were being seduced and controlled by these dark political forces, by demagogues, by the promise of easy money, by the extreme rhetoric of the far right and the far left. Hull represents the naive public. He sits there at the table, thinking he is in complete control of his fortune, but he's being guided by a force he simply does not comprehend.
Hull represents a moron. And then, as if bankrupting the poor bloke is not enough, Mabuse decides to have him seduced.
By the tragic Kara Carrozza.
Tragic. She is a plot device in a dress. Mabuse arranges for Hull to be seduced by his accomplice. Why? He has already won the money. He has already ruined him financially. What is the point?
It is about total, utter destruction. It is what the source calls diabolical manipulation. He does not just want Hull's money, he wants his soul. He wants to lead him to absolute rack and ruin. It shows the audience that Mabuse is not just a thief, he is a sadist. He enjoys the play. People are just puppets on a string to him.
It is a soap opera. Oh, go seduce him, then dump him, then we will all have a wicked laugh about it. It is melodramatic fluff. And poor old von Wenck, the great defender of law, is running around like a headless chicken trying to catch a man who can apparently control minds.
Von Wenck tries. He is constantly on his tail.
He fails repeatedly. The research even admits the struggle is prolonged. And do you know why it is prolonged? Because Mabuse has plot armor thicker than a Panzer tank. Mabuse sends his gang of killers to assassinate von Wenck. Fails. Tries to have him seduced and poisoned. Fails.
But that prolonged struggle is the entire point. It is the double allegory we talked about, the endless struggle between order and chaos. If von Wenck just caught him in the first 20 minutes, there's no movie.
If von Wenck just shot him instead of letting him do a bloody magic show, we would all be home in time for dinner. But no, we have to endure the uncontrollable manifestation of evil for 4 agonizing hours.
You are completely ignoring the visual splendor of it all. Even if you hate the plot, which I think is a massive failing on your part, you have to admit the visual style is genuinely groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking. Or just broken.
The expressionist decor, the design of the gambling den.
Oh, here we go. It is not a crooked set. It is expressionism.
It is. The design of the gambling den is deliberately distorted, highly angular. It visually reflects the twisted, corrupted morality of the people inside it, and the use of circular forms, the round table, the spiral pattern of the cards, the way the camera actually moves. The source explicitly says these circular forms are used to represent chaos.
Circular forms represent that we are going around in circles.
It is brilliant. Lang knew the chaos is the best tool for representing chaos. He is putting the audience in the same disoriented state as the characters.
Hold on a second. Stop right there. You are quoting the praise, but let me quote the reality from the exact same text you brought in. Listen to this. The impression of confusion is achieved through confusing editing. Confusing editing, not artistic editing, not avant-garde genius editing. Confusing. The source plainly says the film has a distinct lack of direction.
It says it creates a sense of a lack of direction. That is intentional.
Making a movie confusing on purpose does not make it smart, mate. It makes it a shambles. If I edit a podcast and just chop the sentences in half and play them backwards, I cannot turn around and claim it is a profound commentary on the fragmentation of modern communication. I would just get fired for doing a rubbish job.
You are totally missing the meta-genius of what he is doing. The film is fundamentally about confusion. It is about a world that makes absolutely no sense anymore. So the editing reflects that fractured reality.
That is the oldest, laziest excuse in the book. It is supposed to be boring because life is boring. It is supposed to be confusing because chaos is confusing. Rubbish.
Yeah.
It is bad filmmaking masked as high art. And the pacing, even you, with all your mental gymnastics, cannot possibly defend the pacing of this thing.
It is a slow burn. It takes its time to build the atmosphere.
Slow burn. The source itself says, and I quote, "The pace of the picture is too slow, period. End of argument."
It needs room to breathe. It is a massive, it spans all these different echelons of society.
It does not breathe, it gasps, it wheezes, it is desperately dragging itself across the finish line.
You are impossible. You just want everything to be fast cuts and explosions. This is 1922 cinema.
Caligari was 1920, and it moved. Nosferatu was 1922. It moved. This is just undeniably bloated. And the source even mentions a massive shortening process that occurred before the release.
Yes, to make it palatable for international distributors who did not understand the vision.
No, because even the filmmakers sat down in the editing room and realized, blimey, we've made a 4-hour movie about a guy in silly hats. We had better chop a few hours out or people will literally riot in the theater. If they had to shorten it massively, that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was too long to begin with.
Or it proves that the studios were cowards who did not trust the audience's attention span. Just like you.
I have a great attention span. I just strongly prefer to use it on things that make basic narrative sense. Which brings us, agonizingly, to the ending. The grand finale.
The descent into madness. It is absolutely perfect.
It is a massive cop-out.
Mabuse is trapped. The police have finally surrounded the house. He cannot use his silly disguises, as you call them. He cannot use his massive wealth. He is backed into a corner in his own counterfeiting workshop.
A very fitting setting since the whole movie feels counterfeit.
He is surrounded by the fake money he created. The illusions are shattered. And what happens? The chaos he unleashed upon the world finally consumes his own mind. He goes raving mad.
He just snaps, just like that. Poof.
He throws the forged money into the air. It is a stunning visual representation of the absolute worthlessness of his power. The hyperinflation rendered the actual money worthless, and his descending madness renders his formidable intellect worthless. He ends up a gibbering wreck on the floor.
It is utterly anticlimactic. You spend 4 hours building up this unparalleled genius of crime, this terrifying Superman who can control minds and collapse economies, and how is he ultimately defeated? Does Von Wenck outsmart him in a brilliant game of cat and mouse? No. Does he go down in a blaze of glory? No. He just decides to go bonkers in a basement.
He does not decide. His mind physically breaks under the immense strain of his own evil.
It is convenient. The writer clearly wrote themselves into a massive corner. How do we stop the guy with the magic mind control powers? I do not know. Let's just make him crazy. It is a narrative failure of the highest order.
It is a tragic, operatic end to an epic tale. He ends up locked away in an asylum. It is the only place he truly belongs.
It is where I belong after listening to you defend this absolute drivel for the last hour.
And look at the legacy. You simply cannot deny the legacy of this film.
Try me. I will deny it right now.
He created a self-perpetuating myth. The character was so iconic that Lang had to resurrect Mabuse twice more. He made the Testament of Dr. Mabuse in the 30s and the Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse in the 60s.
Because he ran out of new ideas and needed a paycheck.
Because the character was so incredibly compelling. He became an archetype. This is an anarchist cinema classic.
Anarchist cinema. That sounds like a very polite academic way of saying nobody was in charge of the script.
It means it challenges the status quo. It shows the audience that the police and the criminals are essentially just competing gangs operating under different rules. That is a radically dangerous thought for 1922.
It is just cynical.
It is realistic.
It is a dodgy, massively overhyped, slow, confusing mess of a film that people only pretend to like because they think they are supposed to. You are terrified to admit it is boring because you think it makes you look uncultured.
And you are so totally obsessed with conventional pacing and basic logic that you cannot appreciate a proper genius work of art when it is staring you right in the face. You are completely ignoring the tortured soul of a broken Germany captured permanently on celluloid.
I am ignoring it because I am fast asleep.
You just do not get high art, do you? You want everything wrapped up in a nice little bow with a tidy 90-minute runtime.
I want a story that makes sense. I want a master villain who does not rely on cheap magic tricks. And I want a runtime that respects my mortality.
You are hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. This film is the foundational bedrock of the modern thriller genre. Without Mabuse, there is no Bond villain sitting in a hollowed-out volcano. There is no Joker. There is no Keys or Sos.
Without Mabuse, I would have 4 extra hours of my life back, and I would be in a much, much better mood.
You cannot be serious.
I am deadly serious, mate.
Well, the film is finished. The discussion is clearly finished, and my glass is unfortunately finished.
Right. Well, since I had to suffer through the colossal length of that film on your recommendation, you are buying the next round.
Unbelievable.
Mine is a lager.
Chomp, chomp.